Good morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. Now, with the Morning Magazine, here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's show on AM 1320 and also on the web at WFHR.com. We also welcome our friends from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media, and they're here because it's time for our Wood County report. Lance Pliml, he may step in. He's busy with a meeting right now, but Mike Martin, Wood County's finance director, is here in his place, and we're going to be talking about the budget. But since Wisconsin Rapids Community Media is here, want to give them a thank you and a shout out for their cooperation in helping us get the to record and produce what we're going to air at 11 a.m. on Saturday. Monday night, there was a League of Women Voters Candidates Forum held at their studios involving area state legislative candidates. We will air that forum in its entirety on Saturday morning, starting at 11 a.m. I have one bit more of editing, fingers crossed, and then my big project of the week is done. But with that, we welcome Wood County's Finance Director, Mike Martin. Good morning, sir.
Morning, Carl.
Okay, get right up by that microphone. You got to get right up to it, sir. Okay, this is the time of year. In fact, last week I had Mayor Verwink here, and he was talking about the budget challenges the city is facing. What is Wood County looking like? And, well, first off, what's our general overall financial health as we go into a new budget season?
Well, since we've been in the third year now of borrowing for our road projects, we went to the market again to borrow money for those road projects, also with the river block building. And a sign of our financial health is what do the rating agencies give Wood County as far as, how solid is our borrowing. And once again, we were at a AA1 rating, which is the second highest rating, just below AAA. So the rating agencies think that we're doing just fine, but we do have our challenges.
Okay, so now as you move forward, you got that borrowing program to repair roads, and that's one of the big complaints about all levels of government, from counties to cities, towns, villages, what have you, is the money that's needed for roads and just basic maintenance. How are we doing there? This is, you said, the third year of that program. Are we catching up with some of the road maintenance in Wood County?
We started this back in 2014, and so we're going to be in the third year of this 10-year cycle. Okay. And the first 3 years were supposed to be catch-up phase. And so with 2017, this will be the last large borrowing. We're right in that $4.7 million range that we borrow for. And so we should be getting caught up now. And then for years 7 through 10, it'll drop down quite significantly. So I think we're well on our way to getting our infrastructure back to where it should be. And then we would think that our maintenance costs and, of course, the traveling on our roads is going to be markedly improved.
How will the change of going to the river block building with a lot of the centralizing county operations in that building for the most part outside of the stuff that's in the courthouse, how will that affect overall operational expenses and the like?
Well, our biggest department, both for employees and size of operation, is our Human Services Department. And they're being centralized. We still have, in Marshfield, we still have the Norwood Health Center, which is part of the Human Services. But I think from management standpoint there, it's going to make things improved. Again, time will tell as far as, if there's going to be any cost savings of doing that. But a few years ago, there was a large space needs study done by an ad hoc committee of Wood County, and they were recommending anywhere between a $25 million to a $50 million building project.
I remember that.
To accommodate those space needs. With River Block, our total investment after we get it refurbished is going to be right around $5 million. So if this doesn't meet our space needs for the near future, we'll be better than we thought we were as far as total cost.
As you work as Wood County's finance director putting together this budget, tell us about some of the other challenges you're facing this year.
I think this is my 19th budget that I've worked on for Wood County, and this one was the toughest one.
Why?
going into it, we always look at our cash balance as far as going into any budget year, saying we want to maintain certain cash reserves so we can operate without borrowing for short-term purposes. And we got hit in a couple of ways in 2016. We got notice from the Department of Revenue that there was a mistake made on sales tax. The county has a 0.5% sales tax that piggybacks on the state sales tax, and they give us our share. Well, it turns out there was an audit done, and they informed us earlier this year that they were going to be recouping $800,000.
Why? Well, so it was a mistake that you made? Or?
No, it probably had to do with a large retailer, large manufacturer, whatever, making some things that were reversed on their sales tax returns, and after that audit was found in favor of the business, the state had to pay them back, and they had to pay back our share then also. And so $800,000 is being recouped over the last part of 2016. So that hurt us, our cash reserves. And sales tax rate now is trending a little lower than it had over the last few years. So that hurt us also. The final piece as far as just our cash position was that there were some challenges in our nursing home and Norwood Health Center that they, either because of census in the nursing home or because of psychiatric care for Norwood Health Center, their costs were higher than expected. So they dipped into our cash reserves a little bit more than what was budgeted. So going into 2017, we're lower on cash. Cash wasn't available to balance our budget. And that's been typical. We usually have a little bit of surpluses, and if we're a little bit short on the revenue side, we can certainly use our cash reserves to balance our budget. So it was a challenge going into it.
How do you rebuild those reserves?
Well, we certainly hope that this sales tax was just a one-time thing, and that sales tax will recoup, will rebound. So that's what we're hoping. Beyond that, we don't believe in keeping more cash reserves than what we need. We think that if we maintain 15% of our budget in cash reserves, that will meet our needs as we wait for reimbursement. So we're going to be at 14.5% projected. So we're not in a bad situation. We're just a little tighter.
I can hear Mr. Pliml and my headset or in my mind with the mantra, as a board, we feel the money is better left in the taxpayer pocket than in Wood County's pocket to stick around. So
I've heard the same thing, yes.
Okay, so we both have learned our lesson well.
Yes.
And quite honestly, I agree with that because that's my pocket.
Yes.
Okay, but with these two incidents, whenever you have something like that, it's like in the business world, you go, okay, how do we avoid something like that from happening again? Is there, what have you learned from these two incidents where you might have to tweak the way you do things so you don't get hit like this again? Or is it just the way it goes?
I think that certainly you don't want to be overly optimistic in certain revenue sources. And the sales tax, I thought I was fairly conservative. I certainly didn't see the $800,000 hit that we took. And the current trend being a little bit downward, that's costing us maybe $500,000 also. So I certainly will stay conservative in my projections. With Edgewater and with Health Center, those are things that are being worked out. I think that we've changed the Edgewater budget. Their staffing is going to go down somewhat, maybe more to expected staffing levels. And with the psychiatric services for Norwood Health Center, they're hoping to hire some psychiatrists and have those on board, and that will lower the cost of that service.
Okay. If you're just joining us on the Morning Magazine, welcome. We're visiting with Wood County Finance Director Mike Martin, and he's sitting in for Lance Pliml, who's at another meeting, whom he may pop in before our segment is over, but we're talking about the Wood County budget, and this is budget time for local units of government. One of the unique aspects of county government, of course, is you're the administrative arm of state government. The state decides they have programs, and you're the ones that are going to administer them, or they're going to put a mandate on you, and then they say, just do it. And you're going, where's the money? So talk a little bit about, is that problem getting worse, or some of the challenges you're facing in that area?
You know, what you said is absolutely true, and we've met as a department head group a number of times looking for solutions to the revenues aren't keeping pace with expenditures. And our hands are tied in many cases. We do programs that the state, has us do on their behalf, normally in the area of human services. That's our biggest area. And the state aids tend to be fairly flat and even decreasing sometimes. And so if they don't keep pace, that puts more pressure on the local government as far as their revenue sources. We don't have a lot of options to go on. And the exec committee has already made a proclamation. They said because of the challenges we had this year, they are going to look as far as what kind of options do we have. Do we cut back on certain services that we have the option to cut back on, because there's only a few of those, and if there's new revenue sources, do we consider going down that path?
Okay, so what might this mean for Wood County's taxpayers and its citizens? Everybody, there's too much, and a lot of times it comes from the same mouth. I want my taxes low, I want my services high. And the two don't, in the business world, people know that, if a business needs to raise its prices to keep up with its expenses, sorry, consumer, our prices are going up. But when you throw politics in and you talk about taxes, oh no, I want my service and I want those taxes low. And then it falls on you to bridge that gap. Where are we in that whole debate?
Well, that drives accountants like Marla and I just crazy. Because, and we are all in favor of maybe having a few more accountants down in Madison, just to have it make financial sense. Because right now, again, we have tax levy limits. We cannot raise our tax rate for operations more than what's called net new construction.
That's what the mayor was talking about that here in Wisconsin Rapids.
Our net new construction for this budget year went up by 0.96%, which generates $200,000 to balance our budget. Well, we've got a $110 million budget. $200,000 unfortunately doesn't go very far. It doesn't cover even cost of living issues or health insurance costs. So we're challenged as far as what do we do. Now the tax rate is going up. It's gone up each of the last couple of years on the debt service side because we're borrowing for those highway projects. And so the tax rate for operations is staying flat. I think it went up by a penny. But for debt service, our tax rate is going up by about 27 cents per $1,000 of value. So for a $150,000 house, that's going to increase our taxes about $42. So there will be an increase, but what we hope that with the taxpayers is that they're going to be driving on nicer roads over the next 5, 10, even 20 years. So the tax rate is going up, mostly in the area of the debt service, but we're seeing results of that with better roads.
Well, I've heard that. Well, of course, bad roads lead to expenses involving like, hey, I gotta get my vehicle fixed because I wrecked an axle because I hit a pothole or something like that. So, you pay the piper one way or the other. One thing I wanted to bring up with you, since you brought up net new construction, Mayor Verwink brought up, I think it's a legitimate argument. A lot of these limits that the state puts on, and Lance Pliml has joined us, is, they're great for urban areas, but outstate areas, there's a different picture here, and it's like a one-size-fit-all mandate or rule that doesn't take into account the situation in the more rural areas of the state and the challenges that they're facing. And I know you're just a numbers guy, but maybe Lance would care to join us and give his say about that. Because I'm hearing that from a number, and it doesn't matter what kind of party affiliation, whatever, they're saying this kind of one side, these rules tend to favor more urban versus rural. And Scott Krug has told me the real debate in Madison nowadays is not Democrat versus Republican or liberal conservative, it's urban versus rural.
Well, you've certainly seen an exodus from the rural areas into the urban areas, and so there is growth in those areas. Local control is something that we always advocate for and would love to see that. I guess the part that I find somewhat irritating at times or frustrating is that the people at the local level of government are much more fiscally responsible than they are at the state government, and the state government is typically more responsible than the federal government, and the further you get from the constituent, the less responsible you become. So when they enact levy limits and rate limits on us and don't allow us to spend money on those things that we find important in our own communities, it creates a problem.
Yeah, because here's what's going to happen. If something needs to get fixed, it's not going to get cheaper. And it's the damage, whatever needs to be fixed, is going to get worse.
Yeah, I can't say it any better. Good job, Carl.
Okay, thanks.
Boy, was the timing of that question perfect as far as Lance showing up.
But yeah, but that's that kind of. Then you're put in as the finance director. We got this problem, Mike? How do we fix it? How can we afford to fix it?
And I tell the exec committee, I says the math just doesn't make sense. And again, I pride myself on being pretty decent at math. But we're stuck in a situation where we don't have a lot of control. We don't have a lot of options as far as what we can do, and so it's a challenge.
What are some other areas or the red flags that you have pointed out to Lance and the executive committee and the county board that either not that we're facing presently or will be facing down the road?
Well, we were able to we self-fund our health costs at Wood County. And so we've got cash reserves, and the employees and departments kick in to fund those health costs. We were able to keep health cost increases pretty flat or zero over the last 3 or 4 years. And this year we got hit. I don't know if it's a cycle of health costs that will rotate back, but our health fund took a hit in 2015, and we think it's going to go down also in 16. So this year, for the 2017 budget, we raised our health premiums to both our employees and to our departments. So that was a big part of our costs. Our capital outlay costs went up significantly, mostly to the refurbishing of the River Block building, and we also have our ongoing capital costs in highway, of course, and parks and sheriff equipment.
Yeah, those insurance costs went up, and not nearly as far as those who have the Affordable Care Act are seeing it as their premiums roll out. But it is something when you're self-funded, you're paying the piper directly, and this was just a bad experience here in that respect. Can I just touch something real quick? We really do have an outstanding staff in our finance director's office, with Mike and Marla. They do a tremendous job, and they take hundreds, if not thousands, of pages of information and detail and boil it down and provide a pie chart or a graph in color that I can understand, and hopefully the rest of the board. They have to boil it down that far for me. But we've been an extremely fiscally responsible county, and that really is under the direction of Mike. And I wanted to point that out, not only because he was nice enough to sit in here for me earlier this morning, but he's the go-to guy.
Okay. Well, I sympathize with him and his counterpart in the city when you're dealing with all these different state rules and mandates and everything else, yet you have a legislative body that's trying to be responsive to the local constituency. And then you tell them, well, yeah, that might be a nice thing, but you can't do it.
Well, he tells us we can't afford it. Obviously we set policy, but that's what I talked about before. We have a bunch of mandates. Obviously, 80% of our budget is pass-through dollars, somewhere in that vicinity. I'm using round numbers. But at the end of the day, we don't control most of the things that we spend money on. And we constantly have these mandates rolling down that either provide a new service or a higher level, a Cadillac version of what we did in the past. It makes it extremely difficult to budget, and there are no additional dollars to garner. We don't make widgets. We can't grow more dollars, so we work with what we have. And Mike is the guy I always kid him and say, he's the Chicken Little, the sky is falling guy. But he's right. At some point, the rubber meets the road. There are no more dollars, and you have to, in some ways, make it work. And it doesn't always work as best as it might. Should you have some other opportunities available? As
the county board chairman, what are you most concerned about going into this budget year? And you've got this, you're in the process of repairing your highway infrastructure and the like, and you got the new, the facility you're moving into, the River Block downtown. Are you hoping for some savings down the road because of that? What are some of your concerns?
My big concerns probably are in the mental health arena, where we don't have a real easy way to control those costs. We have no providers in the area. We're spending $1 million plus in addition to what we might typically be spending on those providers. Medical assistance, Medicaid payments continue to be reduced, and yet we're responsible to make up the difference. It's not too easy. Again, I'm going to use round numbers. If it costs us $250 a day to house somebody and the government decides they're going to give us $50, and I'm just using that as an example. There's a lot of examples of that type of programming that goes on. Those concern me because we really have a service we need to provide and no way to control the cost.
Yeah, and that's a service that the state is even saying, well, we got to address mental health issues. Okay, county government.
Yeah, you touch drug and alcohol problems,
That's
incarceration, our criminal justice system. We're seeing that population, that incarcerated population grow to some extent. And what do we do with them? How do we house them? How do we pay for it? And maybe more realistically, we should look at how do we fix the system so we don't have those problems to begin with. But that's a whole nother 2-hour show.
Well, yeah, I know. But Mike gave us the figures in terms of what was the bottom line in terms of property taxes.
The property taxes are going up by about 29 cents per $1,000. So $28 on a $100,000 house, $42 on a $150,000 house, and it's almost entirely in the debt service area. As far as our debt that we're taking out for highways and now the river block, that's adding to the tax rate for 2017.
Okay, Mr. Political Leader, you get a call from a constituent. Why are my taxes going up? What's your response?
It's Mike's fault. He calculated all the numbers. Again, I've said this before, but I'll go back. Our county has been extremely fiscally conservative over the years, and we did not see an increase in those tax rates or in the total levy in many instances for many, many years. And we haven't gone to the taxpayer to ask for those dollars unless it's absolutely needed. The river block funding is pretty much a one-time, project. It'll be a generational issue. The highway funding will also even out, and I think actually by next year we'll see some pullback in that. So I think that in some ways that will be controlled, but obviously we need more contribution from the state on the the highways, the bridges, the infrastructure, maintenance, and or creation of new roads. And then, like I said, river block's a one-time shot.
And when we talk about highways and infrastructure, that goes back to our conversations we've had, and I've had with myriad of different officials. We need a long-term solution to our transportation funding in the state.
Yeah, I get tired of Mike and Marla telling me I can't have any more money or that we're out, but that's a reality. And generally speaking, if we interviewed the taxpayer out there or took a poll, they'd say we pay enough in taxes. It's our job to make those numbers work.
Okay. Well, I thank you all for being part of today's show. Very interesting discussion to learn about the challenges of putting together a budget to finance the operations of Wood County. And good luck.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you for being here. Lance, thanks for stopping in.
Thanks for letting me pop in. I was on a conference call I had to be on.
That's okay. Hey, you're doing your job. I understand. Okay. Both of you have a great weekend.
Thanks, Carl.
And with that, we're going to wrap up part one of today's Morning Magazine here on AM 1320 and WFHR.com, as well as Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. The Morning Magazine, as always, is brought to you by Comfort Air.